Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of ElevateNonprofit.com, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all heading up together. We're excited to have on the show someone that works in the event fundraising world with us all the time, an incredible thought leader that we love collaborating with. And we're going to talk a lot about the changing event landscape and what's going on in event world, how data informs events. So Beth Sandefur, welcome to the Fundraising Elevator. We're so glad to have you here.
Hi, friends. It's so great to be here. I'm very excited.
Well, let's introduce everyone to Beth a little bit.
Let's do it. Beth is a seasoned event planner with a strong background in development and hands-on experience with theatrical production. Her efforts focus on planning and execution of fundraising galas, typically with a large auction component. She is the founder of Beth Sandefur Events and speaks production tech, database, and ENCORE with equal passion and aplomb, facilitating the creation of uniquely dramatic events without the drama, which we love.
We love that.
We love. So, big question to start us off today, Beth. What are you seeing in the fundraising event landscape these days?
It's a good question. I feel like I'm seeing, it's almost like the path has sort of diverged in three ways. I definitely see organizations that have just gone right back to their pre-pandemic models. Nothing ever happened. It was a blip. We did work before. It works now. It's great. It's good to go. There are some organizations I work with that I feel like have made changes to their event. And, I'm going to call it post-pandemic. Are we really? Who knows? Whatever.
Right.
In the current, right? In the current sort of iteration where we are, I feel like some people have made changes to their event and they're finding success in their new models. And then I think there are some organizations that are just still feeling challenged and haven't really found their way yet and are struggling. So, I don't want to call it all over the map. I don't feel like it's all over the map. I think there's definitely a difference between organizations that have stronger development departments and maybe those that are either just smaller or, not as strong. But, it's kind of I don't know, what were you doing before? How is it now? There's no one set answer of this is how it is these days.
Yep.
I think
that's
there's
fair.
no one size fits all either. We've been talking a lot about the impact and accessibility of hybrid events, and a lot of organizations have adapted hybrid. But we often are in conversations with organizations who, when they really distill down and answer the hard questions about who is in their room, who is their donor base, how are they engaging their donors through the rest of the year, sometimes going back to what they were doing before is the right answer. Sometimes, smaller. We're seeing a lot of events that are smaller. But I know so much of your work, Beth, has always centered data. You've always looked at, let's see what the numbers tell us. Here we are, spring 2024, we can debate about COVID, but we're sort of in this place where we've had a pause with donor communications for a couple of years. How much does data play into your planning and your recommendations? And is it still something you're using as a tool?
I am. Yeah. I don't think that anything has fundamentally changed. I think that things that we knew were true before have intensified.
Yes.
Right? I think people are more interested in experiences and things that can't just be bought when we're talking about auctions, right?
Yep.
But it's always been the experiences of the higher value, sort of things that draw in more bidders. And that's even more true than it was before. And I'm definitely seeing organizations who are curating their auctions in a different way, and auctions have gotten smaller as a whole. They're never going to completely go away because people have different motivations to give, and some people don't want to make a straight gift. They want the stuff. They want to be seen as the big bidder, in the room. I think it's just, again, it's just the same stuff is there. It's just intensified more, and it's distilled down more to those base elements, I guess.
Okay, you said stuff. I want to touch on auctions for a second. I want to know, so I have a trend, I've noticed a trend that I'm super keen on and in love with right now, which is we used to not include consignment very often in our auctions because there is that element of cost to the nonprofit.
Right.
We usually used it if we needed a way to bring a big wow factor. We felt like an auction needed just a little more oomph to it, or we were looking for a particular event or experience that fit a donor demographic. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing organizations do just consignment auctions in an online format where they'll pull together, it takes them 10 minutes to pull together 10 packages that they select from a menu from a consignment company and push it out independent of their event in an online auction format. Is there anything like that you're seeing in the way of like new in auctions or things that are like really going, or have like silent auctions changed or live auctions?
Right. So, yes to all those things. I'm trying to take this at a, so on the silent auction, so I might say this, let me back up before I say this. I think that one thing that the COVID experience did for a lot of events was it gave people the opportunity to completely tear their event apart and put it back together in a different way.
Yes.
Yep.
Because we had to do something different in 2020, 2021. Like all of a sudden it was virtual, things were changing, all of that. And so all of that, well, this is how we do our event. Like we've done it this way for years and years and years, whether that's coming from, the person at the organization or the board or the gala chair or whoever. Like you're like, well, we can't do it that way. We have to do it different now.
Yeah.
And they found out that some different things work. So for some organizations, like maybe the silent auction went away or it got smaller, or maybe people were super anti-mobile bidding and then now that we had to, I feel like COVID was the best thing that happened to the QR code ever.
Right.
Like all of a sudden, and we're
it was going away and now it is front and center.
I know. And so like that changed. Like it's, well, sure, let's do our silent auction and have it be online for a week and like lead up to the event. Or it's okay if the auction closes after the event is done because we don't need to get everyone their stuff that night.
Right.
Like I think it's changed the way people think about the silent auctions. I think in terms of live auctions, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and here for the average nonprofit, pre-2020, an average length of a live auction was like 12 to 16 auction lots. Mm-hmm. And in the virtual, I know you guys didn't do as many virtual live auctions as I did.
Yeah,
but
you did amazing work there.
Well, work. Like I'm not sorry to see those days go, but the auctions got down to like 3 to 5 auction lots. And so now when people have come back, it's like, again, I don't think the auctions are ever going to go away, but I do think people are much more interested in the experience things, like what are the auction lots that are connected to the organization in some way, if it's a backstage at a theater, or, overnight party in the museum or whatever, those kinds of things. And so I think they're just being curated better. And I will say that there's, one company in particular I can think of that's newer on the market that has been, at least in the Bay Area, like really pushing their vacation packages, or a consignment company. I've had some conversations with a couple of other auctioneers down here about like they are flooding their market because all of a sudden these packages are showing up in everybody's live auction. And how soon is it before people get hip to the fact that this isn't unique? And I actually on Tuesday was in a call with an auctioneer friend of mine, and he had a consignment package from this company in one of his live auctions over the weekend. And someone in the audience knew and was just like, and they knew like, oh, you get it up to, $12,000 and we'll double it. And it got up to like 9 or 10. And the second place bidder was like, why don't you just sell 2?
Oh,
yeah. Just sell 2. Like, I know it's not like special,
Mm-hmm.
I know it's like, you just got somewhere, like just sell 2. And there was the scramble of like, and the organization was like, it's fine. Like we'd rather double it at the 9 or 10 and still get out of it than try to push it up to 12. Like, well, it's fine. We'll take it. So like, that was interesting to me to see that. I think that people are more savvy.
Yeah.
Bidders are savvier than maybe we think they are sometimes, It's not always just about like get everyone drunk and irrational with their philanthropy and they'll give whatever. Like the smart bidders, like they know what they're bidding on, and they're probably bidding on some of those consignment packages if you use them at more than one. But like they've seen them other places. So I'm not big on consignment. I think it cuts into the bottom line. That's the main reason I don't like it. And to me, it just feels kind of lazy if all you're doing is picking things from a consignment menu and sending it out. And like, okay, well, here's the stuff. I think that there are other better ways you can fundraise that are making actual connections with your organization than just here, purchase out of this catalog we've made for you.
You live so close to Napa. I have a vision of you just like gathering wine all over the place and just having wine at all your auctions. Such a luxury.
Well, I think what's interesting in what we're talking about, and I want to go back to the opening sort of question. We were talking about the landscape, Beth, and you were talking about sort of the 3 avenues, one of which is we were doing events and then hey, COVID, and now we've gone back to what we're doing. And I think what's interesting in that and what I'm sort of hearing in the auction piece is that even if organizations have gone back, I don't know what it is to go back to anything, it's moved forward, right, in some way, and it's been impacted, that perhaps there are elements of their events that they're actually choosing now. So even though, like, stem to stern, we're looking at the same format that we've always done, maybe I've actually chosen it now. And maybe it is actually informed by my donor base now. And maybe I'm in a feedback loop that has told me that that's what I should be doing, right? And so some of that is geared toward departments that are really sort of tracking data and looking at data and what that looks like. I know this is sort of your wheelhouse. How are folks tracking relevant data now around that? Talking about auctions, but also talking about events and sort of their landscape. Like, what does that look like? What are you seeing now?
Yeah, it's so true what you said, that I do think that part of what the COVID experience made us do was really think about what are the things that are most important to us. Individually in our own lives, but also like how that translates in our events, and there are more deliberate choices being made instead of just, well, this is how we do it, this is what we do. I think in terms of how you gather again, I don't think how we gather the data is that much different. I do think that if you're doing a silent auction via mobile bidding, where maybe you did it on paper bid sheets before, I was doing this in paper bid sheet auctions anyway.
Right.
But, like, you should be able to download your entire bidding history from whatever software platform you're using, and you can see. So the whole thing of, well, we need to leave the auction open longer because then more bids will come in. And it's like, nope, 25% of your bids are still going to come in the last 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Of bidding like that.
But even that is mind-blowing for people to think about. That they could actually have a story in their numbers that tell them that, so that they can actually make an informed decision about that.
And I think you just have to, like, it's there, you just have to be willing to listen to it. Or, like, I heard someone, it's actually on TikTok, say a really interesting thing the other day. Just as a side note, like, my nerdy TikTok obsession it's this account called Big Excel Energy.
Oh.
And it's this guy who, like, he's called the Bob Ross of Excel. He's always, it's just a very pleasing voice. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to your menu. And he, like, makes these amazing dashboards with all kinds of graphics and stuff. It's always the green screen of the Excel behind him, and he's just got a cat that's, like, in a sling or something right there.
Yes.
Like, it's amazing. Like, it's amazing. The stuff he does with Excel is insane. So Big Excel Energy.
Okay,
like,
Excel.
definitely go look that up on TikTok if that's your thing. But he had reposted somebody on a panel talking about something, and the guy said, it was just really interesting to me, like, so many people, instead of looking at the data that you already have and thinking, well, what do we already know? Ask yourself what you don't know, and then how do we find that out, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think is really interesting. And that's a lot of how my data, path, like how it started for me. As I used to work at a regional theater, and I had been the database manager and moved into the special events position. And I just had a boss that would ask questions. We were going to change our ticket prices one year. And it's like, well, how many people, like, how loyal are people to their ticket level? And has it been like, well, I don't know, let's go find it out. And I went and ran all the reports, and we ended up finding all this information. It was just like having someone ask, like, what is it that we don't know? Is there a way for us to figure it out? Yeah. And then use whatever tools it is. Is it your existing, CRM that you have? Is it your auction software? Do you need to send out a survey to your committee or your attendees at your event? Or do you want to have, like, a, sort of focus group panel? Like, there was an event I used to work on where in a couple of weeks after the event, they would invite the committee and a bunch of people who might want to be on the committee, and they'd, like, have a party, and it would be like, hey, this is what the gala's about. Like, tell us what worked, tell us what didn't.
Yeah.
And the people that were invested enough to come to that, then they're your targets for, like, oh, would you like to be on the committee next year?
Right.
Enact all these changes that you want, So, like, you have to be willing to ask the questions and then figure out, like, okay, well, how do I then get those answers? And it's not always, like, go to your database or run a query and find out, the thing that's in there.
Yeah. We've been watching A True Detective with Jodie Foster. I don't know if you've seen that yet. And that's the question she always asks. What is the question we're not asking? I love that.
I want to, since we're kind of in this neighborhood, the thing that I remember most concretely you walking through that I heard that blew my brain that you mentioned a few minutes ago that I just want to pull forward for our listeners to think about. And it kind of halos in on this, what are you not asking? I think many people are not asking, who was my backup bidder? Can you talk about tracking backup bidders, what that is and what that can do for an organization?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics.
I know. You're welcome. Here you go. Here's your moment.
I love it. So I call it underbidding,
Great.
right? And it's very, very common in the wine auction world to track underbids, and I think that's loosely how it was sort of introduced to me. I think Sam mentioned earlier, I live very close to Napa's and I work on a lot of wine auctions, and so it sort of came to me. But the idea is that if you are at a live auction and you are only recording your winning bidders, it only tells you who won. It doesn't it just doesn't tell you anything else about what happened to your event. So when you start trying to track every bid that gets placed in a live auction, and the way I do it is very simple. I just need to be on the stage where I have a clear view of everyone, and there's like, you listen to what the auctioneer is saying and you watch and you just write really fast. And it like you just, and even if you're never going to get 100% of it.
Right.
People don't bid without, people bid without their paddles, or it's turned around backwards, or whatever. And nodding to the auctioneer like that. But even like anything that you can get is better than having nothing. And what it starts to illustrate, it's two things, or how I like to look at events. I like to look at events from an overall snapshot of, okay, we had 400 bid paddles in the room. This number of them were raised only in the live auction. This number were raised only in the paddle raise. This is the number that were raised in both places. So this is my true percentage of engagement, right? And that's interesting to me, because I don't think you have to have the most people in the room. Like, you want to get, the right people, the people who are going to bid. So looking at that percentage of engagement, you can also start to just track your trends of, like how many of your tables had bidders? Are your big bidders spread all out in the room? Are they clumping in certain areas? Kind of like all your benchmark kinds of stuff. Like, how many tables had somebody at that table that raised their paddle in the fund a need? Like those kinds of things. And then you can also go from an individual perspective and say, okay, Kristen Steele placed 16 bids on 4 different live auction items, and the highest bid that she placed was $20,000, and then she gave $100 in the fund a need. And and which is like our very common numbers that I see. One of the myths that for me it has dispelled is that people come to an event with a budget, and if they don't spend it in the live auction, then they'll spend it in your paddle raise. And it's like, nope, that's not the case. And what you can really see is, it can tell you, oh, Kristen really likes those wine things. Like, maybe like we should be having conversations with her about, this, or, there's a special travel thing, the theater I used to work with, like, go to Ashland with our artistic director and see stuff at Oregon Shakes. When I know later in the season, we're going to do a trip that we're going to invite a bunch of people to, and it's not going to be with the artistic director, it'll be with the dramaturg. Well, Kristen was bidding on that live auction lot and she didn't win. I want to make sure she's on the invite list to go to that trip, right? Like, how can I engage Kristen, different like, points in the year, right? You could have a corporate guest who you don't know, because they're a guest of Wells Fargo. They're completely unknown to you, but they were prepared to drop $20,000 in your auction room. Like, well, that's someone I want to know. Like, what was it about, that where you're connected? Or you could have someone at your organization who is a very faithful, $500 a year donor. Like, that's all, they buy a gala ticket. Like, you think that that's kind of all they can do. And then, like, their capacity, right? Because you run your query and it's like, show me everyone that gave, at this level. But then what if they were the person that was prepared to drop $20,000? Like, does that now make them a prospect for a lead paddle raise gift next year? Or like a larger annual, it's just like giving capacity. You can just see that stuff. So it gives you as a development person, like, more data points, more touch points for conversation. And is it, I'm a firm believer of like, yes, wrap that into the stuff that you're doing all year round. Maybe it will pay off in a year-round campaign. Like, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just makes them a better, stronger, more faithful gala participant the next year. Like, that's okay too. It just gives you more information to work with when you're thinking about how to cultivate your event attendees and your donors.
And what's so fantastic about that is that many organizations only see me as a donor when I pop up in a way for them to send me a receipt. But exactly. I sat in that room and I threw that paddle up. And if I didn't walk away with it, I certainly helped it go at $20,000 because I was helping participate in
Which
that.
she does all the time. That is your MO. You're like you love to drive the bidding up.
And I never put that bid card up for something I don't want and I won't spend the money on. But what's interesting is that gives you a better 3D portrait of me and what I want and what I'm trying to do and what I'm willing to do for your mission. And I think it's a magical thing to unlock for organizations.
And I've seen that happen with board members a lot.
Yes.
It's like, oh, well, this board member, like, they buy tickets, but they don't really do
They don't do
anything
anything.
else. But like, if that board member is like bidding everybody else up, like, there's value in that.
Yes.
Like, they're willing to put that out there, and they're also like, if they're bidding just to bid somebody else up, it makes the auction important at that table.
Yeah.
Because Sam is bidding. What I mean?
Yes.
Like there's value to it, and you just don't know that it's happening, or you might like anecdotally know, oh, I saw so-and-so bidding on that, but like until you have, some people have to have black and white stuff to respond to. And when I can show you a spreadsheet that's like, here's everything these people did at the during the auction at the event, and all of a sudden it just resonates for some people in a different way.
Well, and it makes those people the right people to have in the room. Whereas if you're just pulling the other report of what's spending, you're like, they give us $100. I don't know that we need to invite them to our $500 gala.
Yeah.
Well,
even when you're talking about like table placement, right? Because like there's only so many tables can be at the front, right? Like somebody's table. But if it's like, okay, I know that this board member, maybe they're not the biggest spender, but they like to bid a lot and get it up. I can maybe push them to this table that's a little bit further back because they're going to make it feel important for the back of the room. You bet. Right? Like the entire room is going to be engaged.
Yeah. I love that.
Well, when we come back, I want to tell a story of how an organization adopted and implemented a totally transformational thing with underbidding, because I just think you brought some secret magic to them and you may not even know about it. And then I want to dive a little bit more into like patterns of giving and things that have evolved in the past couple of years. So we'll be right back. We're going to take a short promotional break.
Great.
The Fundraising Elevator is recorded at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. For years, they've been our trusted partner, delivering exceptional audio-visual production and videography for nonprofits. In 2020, they transformed into a dynamic live streaming studio, producing more than 900 virtual and hybrid events. Now, we embark on an exciting journey together to bring you this podcast. Seeking the best in live events, video production, and live streaming? We proudly recommend our friends at the AV department. Link in the episode description.
Welcome back to the Fundraising Elevator. We're here talking about auctions, events, trends, how things have changed with Beth Sandefur. Beth, you talked before the break about the underwriter and the magic of tracking the underbidder, and the magic of tracking the underbidder and the impact that can have to be able to make informed decisions. And I wanted to tell you a story because you taught at an Elevate conference about underbidding, and we had a partner organization that we work with here who took that knowledge. They then worked in collaboration with their auctioneer to explain to the audience the value and importance of every bidder in the room, and that tonight they're going to be thanking and recognizing the bidder who didn't win the prize but still was actively bidding and helping to support the fundraising with a bottle of wine coming to their table.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Prizes for second place, y'all. Prizes for second place.
So what would happen is the auctioneer would get to the final bid, and any auction always is like the last two people go back and forth a couple of times. So it gets really easy to tell who your final two bidders are. And the auctioneer would celebrate and recognize our winning bidder at, $5,000, $192. But over here, we have our bidder who is in our second place that we want to celebrate and recognize. Hold up that bid card, and then she would acknowledge it. Bidder number 149 coming in to support us and helping to get that bidding up. We have a bottle of wine coming to your table. That way, their volunteer recorder was able to log that backup bidder, and the bidder was now motivated to get the bidding higher. And all of a sudden, over the course of about 3 years, their auction bidding transformed because people were like, well, I'm at least going to win something out of it. And they would just keep, and every year they made huge leaps and bounds. I think for 3 years in a row, their underbidder got, and then they started having to outdo themselves. They started bringing in like special champagne or a special bottle that's from the winemaker sitting here at the table. But it was just a fun way to even acknowledge to the guests the value of, every auction comes down to 2 bidders, and it's all a matter how long you stay in that game as to how much money we raise. And it totally just transformed things.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Because I have no idea.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that too, because I talk about, my crazy spreadsheets, and you look at this and percentage of engagement, and like, you don't even have to go that deep.
Right.
It could be like as simple as like, well, who was our second place person, having your auctioneer help you and you're acknowledging, and there it is. Like, I love that can scale that way, and that they found. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, and also what's so great about that is it really gets at the reasons people give.
Yeah.
And, if let's say I'm up to $5,000 trying to upbid somebody on a package and I get a great bottle of wine, I could go buy a lot of great bottles of wine for $5,000. Like, it's not about that. It's that I'm a part of something. I'm being seen, being celebrated, all of those things that make it that I'm going to go do it again on the, it just is, it's all of those things in one fell swoop. It's great.
Well,
that's fantastic.
I feel like there's been an evolution over the years of, I remember, Beth, when we first started doing this work, I don't know, maybe I've been in this work longer than I'm going to share my age here. But when we first started doing this work, we had auctions that were like 60 packages. Like,
they were their own spiral-bound notebook.
Auctions, these like catalogs that we would send in advance. So what are you seeing now? Like, how's the data showing up? What patterns of giving are you seeing? Have things changed at all?
Oh, man. Again, I don't feel like things have fundamentally changed.
No.
And for me, I always have to really counter it that, again, I do a lot of work on wine auctions, and they're kind of their own thing.
Sure.
Those are still very thick spiral bound catalogs that people are getting a week in advance, and all that kind of stuff versus, so for example, I did an event a couple of weeks ago. I think we had talked about a little bit. It was for a school auction. There was a Friday night event. It was a 2-day event, but the Friday night event was a standing cocktail reception only. So we didn't have a program, but we had, I think, 6 live auction lots, and we had little signs throughout the space that had like a very brief description of what each auction lot is, and there was a QR code that you could scan and you could look at that. We had also sent out digital catalogs in advance of the event, like, oh, look at this, but then on site we just had these little signs with QR codes. And because we were doing bid cards, that was like a half sheet of cardstock cut in half that I had stapled like a hair tie to, so you could put it around your wrist so you didn't have to carry it.
Nice.
And on the back of that bid card, it was like live auction. I just listed the titles, like 1 through 6, and it was like, the QR code, the scan me to learn more. And people were doing that. They were like,
amazing.
Oh, if I want to know more details, like, let me look at that. So I think that the trend that I'm seeing, I guess, or the thing that I think it's important to take away is to meet your donors where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And there are some auctions or, organizations or whatever that they still need the big spiral bound and all that, and others that are perfectly happy to scan the QR code and look at, a digital, proof of a catalog, either before the event, or after. It's already about, again, knowing who your audience is and understanding them and meeting them where they are and delivering the experience that's going to be important and impactful to them.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we've been stuck so much in the nonprofit world in the land of, but we've always done it that way. That comes at us from boards, from donors. And we're in this lovely little liminal spot right now where we can say, but we don't have to. We didn't do it that way for the past couple of years. And even reach out to donors. I love the committee that brings people together and says, what would you want to change? What feedback do you have? I think that's a stewardship tool, right? It's a way to continue to cultivate folks by saying, we want your opinion. And then it also gives you some accountability back to the donor. We've had organizations do surveys, guest surveys, and heard, we want shorter program, or we want, these things don't matter to us, but these things really do. And then they've been able to report back, we're making changes to our event because we heard you loud and clear. And so I think that there is, like you said, that's the thing that I've been noticing a lot is more curated, more customized, more thoughtful about our donor base, our connections, who's in the room, what they want, and how do we make it convenient? I mean, the hairband on the bid card, like the convenience that offers people is so important right now.
I mean, it is not convenient for the person who's attaching the hairbands to the
No,
card.
I heard you say that, and I was like, good on you, Beth Sandefur. Good on you.
But for a walk around cocktail reception, it was great because people just like slipped it right on the wrist and then it was right there and they had it and, people loved it. It was great.
They weren't leaving them littered around the cocktail tables. So yeah. Our nonprofit friends, when this gets released, are either going to be under the full weight of a spring event that hasn't happened yet, and perhaps they're a little behind on, or trying to get the fall event ball up the hill. What recommendations would you have for them? What are the biggest bang for buck recommendations you would have for them in planning their events right now?
I think what I wish more organizations understood was to be I guess it's twofold. One is like be authentic to who you are. Don't feel like you have to in life or in events, like keep up with the Joneses, right? And be the next big and be whatever. Like be who you are because people respond to authenticity. And it's okay if you're not the biggest, event that's on the block. If you're doing work that's, if you're making an impact and it's successful, it's such a sliding scale, right? And I think the other thing is I think good events have good committee structure behind them. And I think there are ways to set up the committee where, you're not just joining the gala committee to talk about decor and pick the menu, but it's like, no, that committee has a role to play. And that role is the fundraising. And so have your chair and then have, sub chairs, right? Where there's an auction chair and a sponsorship chair and a paddle raise and really empower all those folks. So it's not just, again, to talk about auctions, we need auction items. How many auction items do we need?
Right.
And are there certain categories? And is there a value that auction, is a $25 gift card okay? Or do we need to not take anything less than $100? Give people the more of that kind of information and guidance and structure you can give that level of volunteer, the better they are going to be at actually helping you achieve your goals, right? Because they're going to feel I understand now what this is. And if I can't commit to it, then I know I can't commit to it and I need to back out. And that's fine too. But just giving them that structure of this is really what needs to be done. These are our realistic, concrete expectations, for you to help us get there.
Some of the best organizations and best events that we work with are really tied closely to a very efficient and effective committee. I think the inefficient committee, probably many of us have been on an inefficient committee of, let's all sit around and brainstorm and talk about you should, where the onus comes back to one person in the room to take on all the big ideas and brainstorm where there isn't necessarily a lot of data coming at them or information that informs those you shoulds. The most effective committees we've seen are committees where there is a clear ask of the committee, a job description of the committee. And one organization we work with, their sole role and responsibility is the sponsorship solicitation. They have a very clear path of these are the 25 prospects we are going after. You are responsible for these 3. It's very targeted. It's not just go out and look.
Well, and I think committees I've seen a lot of times are a parking lot for people.
Right.
That devalues their time, their energy, and your work.
Right.
Don't have a committee to have a parking lot for people. If you have people you've deemed as busybodies that you just need them to have some function over here, what happens if you take that energy, give it a job description, ask them what is why do you do this work? What's engaging for you? How do we lean into strengths? I think often people kind of roll their eyes when you say committee. Oh my God, I don't need more people in this planning process for me. But it's what if you helped drive the activity towards something that's really helpful and beneficial.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
letting them flounder in the land of centerpieces and decor, right? Like they'll take
Right.
up that space if you let them because
Right.
you've left a vacuum.
Yeah.
And they're like, well,
And some
this must be
people-
event planning.
Some people really they want to help. They just don't know
Yeah,
how. And they just
totally.
need like that little bit of direction. And there's actually an organization I work with that every year they have a spring event. So usually October-ish, they do like a little half-day retreat for their committee members where we all get together and like we do some exercises and then there's lunch afterwards, and sometimes it'll be at a museum, and then so often we get a tour, like we get a day, right?
Yeah.
But so there's some fun, but some of the exercises they do are things about like it's all on brainstorming of like, well, who do you know? And like there's like a circle diagram. I can dig it up somewhere that like you put all the people in the circle and like because people don't always realize how connected they are,
Yeah.
right? Or
Right.
who they like, oh, but my neighbor, did a thing and invited me to be at their table. Like, cool. Now it's your turn to invite your neighbor to do for you.
Right, right.
And like those, those kinds of things. And just to really get like, we're not in the weeds of here's what we need you to do yet. And it's more, here are the ways that people could help. Like, let's help you start thinking about how you fit into that. So you can say, you know what, I would not be good at getting auction items, but I've got a lot of, friends that might be sponsorship prospects.
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to make a cold call. So let me do that and I'll do that. And just really, because, it's good management for anything, right? It's putting people in positions where their strengths are going to allow them to excel in that position. Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have an organization we've worked with that's a camp, and one of their best assets in their event always is the fact that they have this like knockout, killer, amazing theme that goes all the way through. It's always mission based. It always ties together what they do. It goes through their decor, it goes through their menu, it goes through their entertainment, it goes through all their talking points. And it's because they have one committee member who that is her passion.
Yeah.
How do I make a theme come to life?
Yeah.
You tell me what the theme is, and I'm going to go research it. I'm going to design it. I'm going to get all the donated tools I need to make my vision come true. But it's like they're using her superpower, her super strength.
Awesome.
Beth, you mentioned just very quickly in your sort of committee roles, a special appeal sub-chair.
Yeah.
I want to know more about that
Yeah,
because
I do
I've
too.
never had someone that involved with the big support fundraising on a committee. What does the job description look like, and how do you empower them to be a part of or leverage their support to be a part of the appeal?
Sure. So, in theory, right, whatever your top 3 levels of your special appeal are going to be, I like to have a donor already lined up at each, at least one, right,
Yes.
at each level. So when your auctioneer is like, who will join us tonight, and raise in their paddle at the $10,000 level or whatever it is, right? At least one paddle goes up.
Yes.
So you don't have crickets. So you have to find those people. And it's the same way I think Kristen had just mentioned about corporate sponsors and like, these are your 3 people to go after. I think that you as the organization need to do a lot of the leading and coming up with like, who are the prospects for that and sort of figuring out like, what are the appropriate asks. But then I've just seen it play out so many times at all different kinds of organizations that a peer-to-peer ask from a board member to someone in their social group is just stronger than the development director calling again.
Yeah.
Can we count on you to be the first person to put your paddle up? Like, it's just there's a different dynamic to the relationship and it can just come across in a different way. So, again, I think you as the organization come up with a prospect list and, what appropriate amounts are and, but then give whoever your appeal chair is, or if they've a couple of people, whoever, like, here are the conversations we would like for you to have, and then they can come at it with, this organization means so much to me and you've been a faithful supporter and like all that stuff. It just resonates differently when it's peer to peer versus staff member.
Do you think it's important that that person is a top donor? Like, is it easier if that person is also giving?
I think it can be, but I don't think it has to be.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be someone that's comfortable making the ask.
Yeah.
And if it's someone who is a board member, like maybe they're not the biggest donor, but they're like, I'm on the board and because this organization is important to me because and I would love for you to, there's that connection. I think they need to have some strong connection. I don't think they have to be the biggest donor in the room because I think that there could be some oh, well, you can give, I can't give as much as you, and I don't know.
I always think it's kind of magical to be able, as a fundraiser, to be able to say, I'm giving, I hope you'll join me. So I wonder when you're when you're working with volunteer to go after some of those big gifts, if that's a leverage point that's helpful.
But also, I'm sort of thinking through the peer-to-peer piece, Beth, that you're talking about. There's also an additional layer in that when a volunteer is making that ask. I think sometimes we can go down the road of operational funding and salaries and all that kind of stuff.
Restricted funding.
Whatever. But I do think there's something to if you have a development director and that's the only person that this bigger donor is hearing from the organization around asks.
Yeah.
Just even in the ear, right? Having a different voice in the mix that comes at it from a different angle. And if they're on this committee, they're not just I volunteered one Sunday last year, right? They're invested in this event, and they can talk to them about I'm volunteering on this event because I'm so excited about blah 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 blah, and your gift at this event. It could just be a really different way to have that conversation. I think it's kind of interesting to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Beth, we're going to take another short break. And when we come back, I want to know kind of what you're excited about in the year ahead. And I think that we need to plan on having you back regularly so we can talk case study and share examples together. Because I think we're going to see this evolution in the next few years, that it would be fun to continue to compare and share notes about what's happening. So we'll be back shortly, but a little bit more about what we're looking forward to in the event season ahead.
Great.
Loving the fundraising elevator, but wondering how you can talk to Sam and Kristen? Well, now's your chance to do it. Book one-on-one consulting time with Swaim Strategies experts Sam, Kristen, and Mary, and get all your event questions answered. Our team has you covered on strategic planning, fundraising strategy, storytelling, data tools, and registration support. Get the tools and the help you need to make the most impact at your fundraising event. Book at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.
Welcome back to the Fundraising Elevator. We are here with Beth Sandefur talking about events, data, role. We're just talking about all the amazing things. We want to vision forward now. Beth, what are you looking forward to in events this year?
There are two things. One is more of a personal response, and another is a little, I think that one of the things I'm both looking forward to and have been enjoying is people's willingness to change and to look at are we doing this just because it's what we've always done, or should we do something different? And I think people are they're feeling more free to have a little bit of fun and just think a little bit differently. And I'm enjoying that, and I'm looking forward to see where it goes. Cause I'll be honest, often a lot of my best ideas and things that I then end up presenting on in conferences wasn't my idea.
No.
Some client came to me and was like, what if? And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. So it's fun seeing people just be more thoughtful about, what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely one of the things I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. I love
and then
it.
what about the personal?
The personal one is, and anyone who knows me well and knows exactly where this is about to come, is that I've just done a lot of work on myself in the last couple of years and gotten a better sense of who I am and what I can offer and where my strengths are. And I'm starting to make decisions for my business and how I'm partnering with different clients and maybe not working with certain clients, based on that. And there's something about, I kind of mentioned earlier about being authentic, and what I mean about being authentic is also knowing your boundaries and knowing when to enforce those boundaries.
Yeah.
And I will tell you a story that happened to me in the fall. It was the day before an event, and we're doing a final meeting with the client, just going through content, all the slide decks, everything.
Yeah.
And we get to the live auction, and someone was like, oh, only one slide per auction lot? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, oh, well, but it's a vacation home and we want to show all these homes. And I was like, okay, well, if you want to show a bunch of images from one auction lot, then that really needs to be a movie file.
On the one slide.
Yeah, I was like, that's a whole, it's a whole thing. Like, oh, well, can't it just, like the AV team can just advance things? And I started going through the exercise with them. And I'm like, well, if the AV team is going to advance the slides, then we need to build in cues. And it was Dale Johannes was my auctioneer. I was like, then we need to build in cues to Dale's script. And then, but maybe Dale won't go exactly. And like, I don't know, maybe Dale's go, because it's an auction and stuff happens. So I was like, there's that. They're like, well, can they auto advance? I was like, sure, they can auto advance. How long is it going to take Dale to sell the auction lot? 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes? I was like, what, you're going to auto advance and it's just going to end? And I was like, if you want it to happen, it really just needs to be a movie. I was like, I'm just going to be very honest with you. It's the day before your event, and I do not have the bandwidth to create these for you.
Yes.
I just sat there, and everyone just like blinked at me, on the Zoom call. And so I finally just said, I was like, listen, I love a movie for a live auction lot. I was like, I do not have the bandwidth to do it. If someone in your team would like to do it, that's great. Please get me all your media by noon tomorrow, and they were just like, okay. We sort of went on. And like later in the day, I was thinking like, oh God, Beth, like this is how you get yourself fired because you were like blunt, and you're like, you just let it, loose and whatever. And so the next morning I said, the development director, like, hey, happy gala day. It's going to be great. Kind of was trying my best to be like cheery and stuff. And they all got on site. And at some point, there was a conversation happening between me and the development director who had both been on that call and someone else. And someone else was like, oh my God, like Beth has everything. Like she's so great. And the development director was like, no, we love Beth. We hope that she doesn't fire us after this because like we know we've asked a lot. And I just immediately started laughing. I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad you don't want to fire me after I was like, I'm not making your movie. In this meeting, I was like, I can't, and we just had this great conversation. Like we're good. Everyone's good. Everyone's all good. Like it's all fine. It's all happy. And then later in the day, the CEO of the organization got there and was doing the, oh my God, the room looks so great. Like it's so amazing. And she turns to me and she goes, I just want to say, I really respected you in that meeting yesterday when you were just like, no, that is not happening.
Yes.
Like if you want to do, and I was like, thank you. That means a lot to me. She was like, no, it took a lot of strength for you to say that.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, we needed the reality check and we needed everything. I was like, good, I'm glad. And like, I'm hoping I can keep bringing more of that because I think sometimes, as a planner, as a consultant, as a person that gets brought in, there's this, the customer's always right and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, I could have made those movies, but I would have stayed up late and then been tired the next day, or they would have been like half-assed because I didn't have a lot of time and whatever. And like having to be like, no, this is not realistic. This is how this needs to happen if it's going to happen. Like, I'm glad that I knew about myself.
Yeah.
Where that line was and wasn't afraid to say it. And I'm really glad and like, grateful that I have clients who like, we respect.
Yes.
It's okay. So that sort of authenticity and just ways of being with my clients is that I'm looking forward to more of those types of respectful conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I think so often in our world, first of all, we're working, I'm assuming this is true for you too. We're working with multiple organizations on multiple events. And the only way we're able to do that and do it well, effectively, and with low stress is to have timelines and deadlines and clear communication. And while I think there are so many well-meaning people that volunteer with organizations and with events, sometimes an awesome idea too late in the game can create a lot of stress, of gaps. I mean, that's the thing that I always fear when a really big change, like, hey, can you redo all of the content, comes late in the day, it's going to lead to errors. It's going to lead to, oh shoot, we didn't catch that doesn't match the cue in the AV script, or that the file didn't have time to get tested because every one of those files takes so long to upload. That it is like the best way to walk into an event feeling stressed, feeling anxious, feeling like your butt's on fire, you're exhausted, you haven't slept all night.
And for a thing that, I mean,
the audience won't
perhaps an
notice.
argument could be made that 12th picture really highlighted something in the house that made me upbid.
Sure.
Maybe.
Again, I love to argue something like that for live auction. I don't love it at noon.
No,
the day
6
before
weeks ago, 6 weeks prior, maybe. Yeah. But what I love about this, and I think what translates for our nonprofit superhero friends, is that keeping your eye on the pieces that move the
Yes.
needle is where you should be spending time and energy. And the stuff that gets in the way of that, finding a way to have that respectful conversation, but also to name like, that's a great idea.
For next year.
Can we incorporate that into the auction next year? And can I lean on you to lead that charge? And then you task them the day after this year's event and say, cool, go.
That same advice applies with sponsorship solicitation. When a sponsor says, no, we can't support this year, we've already made our commitments. My next question is, well, let's talk about next year.
Yeah.
So it's this like evolving, it's this evolving planning cycle that I love. I'm proud of you, Beth.
Yeah, I so love hearing that, Beth. Thank you. Thank you for saying that for everybody.
Because I've been on the other end of that. And I know the implication is that, well, it wasn't necessarily something that like had to happen. The implication is so much more stress, so much more room for error. So it's
true.
Kudos to you.
Good on you.
All right. We're going to ask you to step into the fundraising elevator with us. The first place we head is to the penthouse where the party is and ask you to tell us about an event that was memorable to you. What made it memorable?
Love this question. I have actually been thinking a lot about this question because usually the events that are memorable to me are not memorable because of the things that were great. It's all the things that went wrong.
Goat rodeo.
That's the strife of the planner.
One of the epic stories that we tell, it was from, I think it was 2020. It was a virtual event. We were in a studio in Sonoma. Organization was in the studios and it was an animal show. Like everyone was there. We were doing like an in-studio production. Like everyone's there. We'd done all of our tests. Everything was great. We're taking a little break before we actually go live and the internet went out. Like it was hot in California. We get brownouts sometimes.
Yes.
So it's like we hadn't lost power, but the internet was out. It was like, oh God, what do we do? You know, and Xfinity is like, we'll get you internet in 6 hours. We're like, that's not going to work. I'm having a conversation with the owner of the AV company about like, how do we handle this? And, you know, the client, when like not trying to alert the client like catches wind of it, they call over. Their office happened to be like 6 blocks, you know, down the road, basically. They're like, oh, we have internet. And like, I don't know, like I had been working, this is my favorite AV company, the Lux Productions, shout out to them. Like people were packing before we'd even, it was just like, we're going, right? We're going, like, Like we're just going and like someone threw keys and all of a sudden there's a van and we like loaded up like all the equipment that we needed. And there's just like one particular, you know, AV department knows like beast of a computer that was going to be the streamer, you know, with all the stuff and everything. And we rolled down to their office that was actually a construction trailer because they hadn't finished construction on their brand new building yet. And we were like, we'll figure it out. And, you know, nobody had the Wi-Fi password there because it was on like you know, in the hot or whatever. And so I didn't even use my own computer. It was like, I don't care. Just log me into your computer. Let me use I see the internet. Like, let me get on here. And we managed to, like, we went on air, I think like 30 minutes late. But managed to, in the space of like, it was like 45 minutes for the time that we like left, you know, and then like got set up and we're all of a sudden streaming and like only went on air like 30 minutes late. Like everybody was like, hey, like this is not where we planned to be. Like we're in a trailer, you know, just made it happen. And it was, and then we all went back to the AV company's, you know, offices afterwards to unload our gear and stuff and like cracked open beers. And we're just like, oh my God, like that just happened. That like just happened, but it was great. Or, you know, people were like, oh, it's a little bit late, but okay. Like other people were having internet issues too, thought it was their stream, you know, that wasn't working.
That's amazing.
That's a testament to hiring experts.
Yes.
Yes, very much so. Like, I don't think I could have done that with any other crew that like, we all just knew each other so well too. I mean, literally like we're going, right? Throwing it, like we forgot to tell the auctioneer that we were going. He somehow was the last one in the building. Was like, what? Where's everyone going? And we're like, oh my God, it's down the road. Just
come with us.
Like he didn't know where they were. It was this whole thing. But
follow the cables dragging down the street.
I feel like we have our new podcast, which is just the three of us getting together and we're going to drink wine and tell some event war stories. That's amazing. I love that.
Oh God, that's a good one though.
That's a good one.
You know, there's stuff like that. Yeah. There's definitely, you know, I mean, again, I work on some great like multi-million-dollar events and, you know, have met celebrities and, you know, all those kinds of things. But one of the things that really struck me, it was on one of these celebrity-filled, multi-million-dollar, destination, wine auctions, that I had worked with them for several years on the underbid reporting. And they had brought me in to start. I now do more of their. They use Greater Giving as their auction software, so more of their Greater Giving setup. And there's a barrel auction that I run for them, and they'd ask me, "Will you help with fulfillment?" On the Sunday, right? So people party Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday people come and claim their auction items before they. Head
How
off.
much did I buy?
That is a serious
That's
investment
amazing.
of time.
That's
of these
amazing.
owners. That's amazing.
Yeah. And there's like a shipping company that's on site.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
of these big
It's
things.
all
I'm like,
these
can we
things.
ship
Yeah.
it? So it's like a whole operation. And like the thing, people ask me a lot, like, how do we get to be an organization that raises, $21 million in one weekend? Like, how do we do that? Like, what does that happen?
Yeah.
And what I saw when I started doing auction fulfillment with them was how well they know every single one of their donors.
Yeah.
When people are rolling in like a little hungover and I don't remember what happened last night or whatever, the staff there was able to talk to people, like they know their kids' names and where their kids, did they make, were their college applications accepted or not, or how's that doing? Like they know their pets' names, like they know all the stuff about them. So from the outside, it looks like, oh, of course, it's it's like just a lot of money and it's a slick, splashy, production, but like their event actually feels like family because everyone there really knows everyone. And that can happen anywhere. It doesn't matter how much money you're bringing in. And it just really is something that like has stuck with me beyond any of the, oh, cool, I met, I stood in line at the buffet next to Russell Wilson and he asked if there was barbecue sauce on the slide. It's like there's that story that I can tell too. But it was like, no, I don't know. It was just really interesting to me to see that part of how they work that I don't think you really see until you're on the inside of it.
I immediately had a visceral reaction about some of my favorite events have been events where I feel like I'm family as a guest, that like people know my name, people connect me to other people, I'm introduced to other folks. Like there's something magical about that sense of belonging. We talk about the power of that so often, but to think of $21 million in one weekend, that's like,
but that comes from
people
somewhere.
Connecting to people.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I mean, there's some wealth capacity in that room, clearly,
Sure.
but also there's some relationship building happening there.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, let's grab our fundraising friends and head down in the elevator to the basement where we keep our tools. And Beth, what is a tool that you think every fundraiser should have?
So I have 2 new tools that I'm excited about.
Let's
they fall under the same kind of umbrella. And I will say from the upfront, the umbrella might be controversial, but I hope you will go with me when you understand is AI tools.
Yes.
So there are 2 things. One is this app called Fathom Note Taker that I will shout him out. Bobby D, auctioneer in New York, like he introduced me to.
We love Bobby
D. It's amazing. You just you download it, it's on your desktop, it's free, you just sign up for it and it plugs into your Zoom or your Teams or your Google Meet or whatever, and it'll take notes for you. So it joins the meeting like a person and it's just like, oh, Beth's Fathom Note Taker. And it's scarily accurate recaps of the meetings. And I still want to do my own notes for like, oh, this is an action item. And, you can, while you're recording, say like, oh, highlight this section or whatever. As soon as the meeting is over, it automatically sends all the notes out to the people that were in that meeting. And what I love about it is that sometimes as the planner, I may be tasked with hosting and facilitating the meeting and also taking all the minutes. And I get wrapped up in a conversation and we're talking and all of a sudden I'm like, I have not written any of this down and we've been talking for 7 minutes and I don't know. So it's just a really nice, little tool.
Amazing.
That's great.
I love that.
The other one is ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And listen, I've got a lot of friends that are writers and I have felt so guilty and apologize to all of them for using it. But when I'm some organizations can afford to hire a copywriter to write their auction catalogs. Some can't, right? Or don't have a volunteer that can do it or whatever. And when I'm 20 auction lots deep and I've run out of all of my adjectives to describe something that is unique and one of a kind, like ChatGPT, for me, it's a great writer's block kind of thing. I would never use something unedited from there because but it's a great oh, I need a fun way to say this, or I need a creative cocktail name. How many times have we been in a meeting? Someone's like, well, we need a better name for this. What should we name it? And it's supposed to brainstorm and everyone's just sitting there staring at the Zoom, right? And like no one has
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
So there have been times where I've been like, the Zoom is here, and on my monitor over here, I'm plugging stuff into ChatGPT, and I'm like, what about this? Like, what about this?
And people
Like, what
just
about
think
this?
you're genius.
Well, and it gives people
Yeah.
then something to react to.
Totally.
And they start ripping off it and spinning on it. So it's just a great little tool.
I think it's
to
great.
have over there. But those two things I think are really, I don't know. I just like them. And again, like if you're I don't have staff. I have staff for event days, but like in and out of the office every day, like it's just me. And so sometimes being able to rely on stuff like that is really helpful. And same thing, if you're at a nonprofit somewhere and you're the only event manager and you don't have anybody else, sort of with you, or like you're the junior staff person or whatever, like to be able to pull in those couple little tools, I think can just really make a difference.
Those are great. Thanks.
Kristen is a writer and often tackles event scripts, speeches, things like that. And one of the things that Kristen, you say all the time is don't be afraid of the shitty first draft. Like sometimes you just have to get something on the page.
It's easier to edit.
And that's what I think ChatGPT can do. And it's all about like how good are you at prompting it. But
totally.
I love using it for that sort of giving me a first draft that I can build off of, especially if it's something like I need to craft a thank you letter that is for this event on this day, that's coming from this person, that's for this organization, about the impact their mission is making. Enough prompts, it can generate for you like a 90% way their draft to build off of. And that's a huge time saver.
Yeah.
It's all about using
power for good.
Yeah, using the power for good. And ethically using it.
And
right?
ethically using it.
Yes.
Also, I apologize to all my writer friends again.
It's a yes and.
It can be a yes and.
Yes.
Beth, you're amazing.
You're amazing.
We love the work you do. We love the ethos you do it with. How can folks get a hold of you? Talk to you about what they want to do.
I'm at Beth Sandefur pretty much anywhere. So BethSandefur.com. I assume will be linked in some show notes somewhere. I'm on Instagram. People hit me up there. Like, that's fine. But, really the website's kind of the best way.
Okay.
Go there. There's a contact form. There's links or stuff like that. You can reach out to me that way. That's the best.
Well, you mentioned it briefly while we were talking, but I want to highlight that people can engage you not just for planning their event, but people can engage you to come and be that like set of eyes that's obtaining data live during their event so that they can have more information for future events, as well as the tools involved with the event. Like, you're such an expert in leveraging greater giving, understanding the tools. I'm assuming you work with other platforms too.
Yeah, actually, thank you for that segue, because clients for me tend to fall into three buckets. I have a handful of clients where I do top to bottom event production. And it's all the things. I've got a section of clients that bring me on just for auction management. I love an auction. So tracking down donation forms and doing the data entry and writing the catalog copy and all of that. And I work in Greater Giving and GiveSmart predominantly, but also ClickBid. I've used Give Lively, Swell fundraising, which is new. They don't have an auction component, but I've used Swell. And then still a little bit of One Cause. So I'm not, I'm universal a little bit in all those platforms. And then I have clients that hire me just for event night services, whether I'm running a registration desk in either GiveSmart or Greater Giving, or for all of the data, underbid collection and analysis and reporting. So there's lots of different ways that I can be involved and help out. And honestly, someone found me on Nonprofit Happy Hour, which is a Facebook group the other day. They put out a plea. They're new to Greater Giving, and like, we just need to build a project website, and we don't know what we're doing. And I would rather just pay someone to do this. Is there anyone? I was like, I do that. So
great.
That's an hourly rate. Like, I'll build your project website. Greater Giving. So there's lots of ways to engage with me.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, I think your story about losing internet power is such a great example of hiring experts. You are an expert in this space, Beth. You're doing incredible things. We love partnering with you. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. And we look forward to future conversations when maybe we can recap how the fundraising season went.
We can do a season break together.
Thank you so much for having me. And I would love to come back. And I'm into the idea, like, we should just get a bunch of us together and tell war stories for an hour.
I love it.
That'd be great. I love it. I love it.
Beth, happy fundraising. Have a great event season, and we'll talk to you soon.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced by April Clark and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by Chris Peterson, Whitney Gomes, and Nathan Bouquet. Video editing by Steve Osborne. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group, and support from Sophia Keller, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. At Elevate, we believe in bringing people together. Our online learning platform for fundraising events has webinars, workshops, downloadable tools, and more, designed to save you time and stress when planning your next event. We're getting nonprofit, development, and event planning professionals the tools and ideas they need to create events that inspire donors and raise more money. So join us at elevatenonprofit.com. The link is also in our show notes.